Today, we're diving into the story of Hobart, Australia's second oldest city. How did it go from a brutal penal colony at the absolute edge of the known world to the modern capital we see today? Well, to figure that out, we have to start right there, at the very edge of the world.
I mean, that quote just says it all, doesn't it? You've got this city literally squeezed between a mountain and a river. That single fact, its unique, isolated geography, is the key. It has shaped absolutely everything about its history from day one.
So you have to remember, for an almost unimaginable 40,000 years, this land had its own story. And then, everything changed. European sails appeared on the horizon, and that was it, a dramatic turning point. They tried one spot first, Risdon Cove, but it didn't quite work out. So in 1804, a guy named David Collins moved everyone to Sullivan's Cove. The reason? Better water. And just like that, Hobart Town was born.
Okay, now look at this. This drawing from the 1820s by a convict artist, no less, really tells you something. See how fragile it all seems? You've got these tiny little cottages just clinging to the shoreline with that massive mountain looming over them. This is not a city, not by a long shot. It's a prison, plopped down at the end of the world. But wow, things started changing, and fast. Before you know it, the population hits 10,000. And here's the key thing. It wasn't just convicts anymore. Free settlers were showing up, chasing land and a new life. On top of that, whaling was a huge industry. Money from whaling ships was pouring into the port. And that tiny little settlement was starting to transform. All right, let's jump ahead a bit to the mid-19th century to see how things are taking shape. This painting from 1834, on the surface, it's just beautiful, right? You see Aboriginal Tasmanians dancing right on the riverbank. And across the water, you can see Hobart Town starting to grow. It looks so peaceful. But that painting is hiding a brutal reality. As the artist was painting this beautiful, serene moment, a truly violent conflict known as the Black War was raging. A 40,000-year-old culture was being systematically wiped out. So this painting, it's not really a snapshot of daily life. It's more like a ghost, a haunting, final image of a world that was being lost forever. And inside the colony itself, life was just unbelievably harsh, especially if you were a woman. This place, the Cascades Female Factory, was the only prison just for female convicts, and it was a place of unbelievable hardship. Women lived here, they worked here, they even gave birth here, all under this brutal, unforgiving system. I mean, dehumanizing doesn't even begin to cover it. You could be sent here for something as small as stealing a loaf of bread. A loaf of bread! And once you were inside, solitary confinement, back-breaking labor, and maybe the worst part, they would take your children away from you. This place was designed quite simply to break you. And we're not talking about a small number of people. Thousands of women and girls passed through these walls before it finally closed. And you know what's really powerful is that today, so many of their descendants still live in Tasmania. They are the living legacy of these women whose stories were almost lost to history. So by the middle of the century, you can see Hobart is really starting to look like a proper city. Take a look at this map from 1858. See that? It's a grid. Streets are pushing inland from the water, dotted with all these churches, government buildings, warehouses. This isn't a ramshackle outpost anymore. This is a city, imposing its order on the land, drawing straight lines where there were none before. And if you want one symbol of that change, look no further than Parliament House. See, in 1856, Tasmania got self-government. That was a huge deal. It meant they weren't just a prison run from London anymore. They were their own political entity, making their own decisions for their own future. A massive shift in identity. And the growth just keeps on coming. The population hits 25,000, and the economy is changing too. It's not just about whaling and wool anymore. Now you've got breweries, jam factories, timber mills, all the signs of a solid, working city. Hobart is becoming a true Victorian city, even though it's all the way down at the bottom of the globe. Okay, let's fast forward to the turn of the century, the year 1900, and look at Sullivan's Cove now. It is a seriously bustling port. Federation is just around the corner, a new century is dawning, and Hobart is now shipping out apples, timber, and zinc to the rest of the world. You can just feel the change in the air. And the signs of a modern city are everywhere you look. You've got electric trams zipping down the street. The first cars are starting to show up next to the horse-drawn carts. And think about this. Telegraphs and steamships are making the world feel so much smaller.
For the first time, Hobart feels properly connected. Right before World War I kicks off, the population pushes past 40,000. It's a good time for the city. It's prosperous, it's growing, a confident little city at the edge of the British Empire. But, as we know, all of that is about to come to a grinding halt. This right here. This is October 20th, 1914. Just look at the crowds on the docks. Thousands of people watching Tasmanian soldiers get on those ships. They're heading off to a war everyone thinks will be over by Christmas. It's heartbreaking, really, because for so many of those young men, this was the last time they would ever see home. Now, in the years after the war, the city gets back on its feet, and the population climbs towards 60,000. And then comes a real game changer: aviation. Suddenly, that famous isolation starts to fade. A flight to Melbourne now takes just a few hours, not an entire night on a ferry. But even with all this, Hobart still kind of felt like a small town. But that small town feel, it was about to be challenged in a big way. You know, to really get modern Hobart, you have to understand a part of its story that was deliberately wiped off the map. We need to talk about a lost neighborhood called Wapping. So, Wapping, it had a bit of a reputation. It was a working-class area, right on the water, home to sailors, stock workers, and their families. But to people on the outside, it was often just dismissed as a shanty town, a blight on the waterfront. But here's the thing. If you actually look at the old photos, you see that's not the whole picture. These weren't flimsy shacks. These were solid houses, made of stone and brick. Yeah, it was probably crowded and noisy, but it was a real community. It was home. So the question is, if it was a real neighborhood with solid homes and a real community, where did it go? Why did it just vanish? Well, the answer comes down to two words: urban renewal. After the war, there was this huge push for progress. The ideal was a modern, clean, efficient city. And old neighborhoods like Wapping, they were seen as blight. They were seen as something that was in the way of the future. And so, in the name of progress, the bulldozers came in. Through the 1960s, the neighborhood was torn down, and by the 70s, it was completely gone. The houses, the streets, the whole community just wiped away, replaced with concrete warehouses and modern shipping docks. Today, it only exists in photos and memories. You know, when you look at the whole story, from the destruction of a 40,000-year-old culture to the demolition of a working-class neighborhood, the one constant in Hobart's history is this relentless, often brutal change. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? When a city builds its future by erasing its past, what's really lost in the process?